Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we like to say here at Shady Acres Woodshop, howdy. Today we have Cork Oak. I've never heard of Cork Oak, have you? It's got very interesting bark. This comes to us from viewer Dennis in California. Look at that bark. It looks like Shirley Temple's curls. I cut a slice off the bottom. That bark goes all the way around there. And they actually use that bark to make corks for wine bottles and whatnot. So apparently it stays flexible. When I press on it real hard, it actually gives. Just amazing. This piece is wet. It's about 30% moisture content, but I just couldn't wait any longer. Dennis sent this to me a while ago and I've been waiting for it to dry, and it's not dry, but I just have to turn it. It's just too unusual. So we're gonna do just that. I'm gonna take this over to the drill press and cut a large flat spot here from my woodworm screw and drill a hole. We'll get it mounted up on the lathe and get to turning this Cork Oak. This is that little slice I cut off the bottom. You can see how flexible that bark is. And I had to chisel a little bit after I drilled my hole for my chuck clearance. I had to chisel a little bit more, and it's just like rubber. It was actually harder to chisel than wood because it just sprang back. Interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what we come up with. Kind of looks like white oak grain, but it's Cork Oak. And speaking of white oak, Dennis said that he had some white oak that he'd send along and some acacia. He's just waiting for them to dry, so that's very generous of him. Acacia should be a lot of fun, and I don't know that I've ever turned white oak. So we're going to be turning at, it's out of balance because of this very thick end as opposed to this thin end. Only about 450 RPM, 5/8 inch bowl gouge, mask and face shield on. And I'm approaching from the top side down so that I don't lift that bark up off of there. Kind of contrary to the way we normally work, but it's the right thing to do. Whew. Well, there is wood under there. That's a plus. It's just such an odd piece to turn because it feels so soft, but it's hitting the chisel pretty hard. I should be able to pick the speed up here pretty soon once I work the size of this down. I'll try the speed. It's about 610. I don't think I mentioned the size of this. It's roughly 10 by 6. I'd like to get up here on the top and work that way, but then I'm lifting that bark up. And that's my problem at this point. That's kind of getting there. I know you can't see it exactly. See, this is what I'm trying to do, is round up this right here, which I've pretty much done. It's hard to know if you have a clean cut because this isn't going to cut cleanly. I hope it'll sand okay. Probably will. Yeah, I think it will. So I'm actually just about done there. I still have a lot of work to do on this, on the lower side. Now you can't see this part, but there's still a cut flat on here. So I need to come in further from the bottom. But I just wanted to see if I could get this rounded over like it is. And I kind of like that. Try and smooth this cut a little bit. I hope I don't get in your way here or bump you. I'm going to try speeding it up. About 673. Okay, I'm going to leave that for a bit. It's not bad. Could use a little more smoothing. But I'm not sure what I have to do back here on the bottom, so we'll move back here. This is what I want to work at getting rid of, this flat spot. So I'm going to be coming from here down and rounding it towards the bottom. It's rounder than I wanted to get, but I got to get rid of that. And I'm going to have to come back up here and re-round these because I have to come up so high to take care of this. Well, yeah, I don't know. We got it. Ended up putting a little tiny pedestal on here. And I kind of like that. So we'll leave it. But I do have to go back up and round over these corners again. I'm going to mark out for a tenon just so I can see where it is. Okay, let me go up here and round these corners over. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll do a little shear scraping on this side, try and refine this little pedestal, not much of a pedestal, and then we'll put the tenon on. Okay, I think we've got that. Now the tenon. I'm going to switch to a 3/8 inch bowl gouge to work on this tenon. I'm going to get rid of the tailstock here just because I'm out of room. And we'll just clean that up a little bit and then I'll square up the sides of the tenon. I'm going to use this diamond point tool to square up the sides. Now I messed up my nice finish in there. Okay, time for sanding. When I have bark, I always sand it with my Sandal Flex. I'm a little afraid to sand this bark, but I'm going to anyway. Basically, to clean it up. It's not very sharp or anything, you know, it's pretty soft, but I just kind of want to clean it up a little bit. So I'll try this 180 grit, and that's as fine as I'll go. And then I'll switch to a 2-inch sanding disc at 80 grit, and I'll work up through 400, and I'll show you both of those as soon as I get my mask on. Yeah, I guess that's going to work okay. And then with the lathe spinning in reverse at about 360. And then I'll alternate with forward as well. It doesn't look like that'll be much of a problem. So I'll bring you back when it's time to put some finish on, and I wish I knew what that was going to be. I don't want to ruin it. I've never turned this before, and I'm worried about the bark and finish. We'll figure something out. See you in a bit. Well, I went in and did a little research on finishing this kind of wood, Cork Oak, and I didn't find much. I found one guy that made a bowl, and he finished it with wax. He didn't say what kind of wax, he just said wax. And so I'm going with Howard Feed Wax, and my thinking is it'll keep the cork supple, and because this is green wood, it'll keep it from drying out too fast. That's my thinking. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I really like it quite a bit. It's so unique. I also did a little research on how they harvest this cork. And they actually harvest it from a live standing tree. And they cut a slit down the bark, and then they take pry bars and pry the bark off. And then, miraculously, the tree grows new bark. Pretty cool. So I'm going to apply this to the bark with a brush in a minute here. And then the way I'll get it out of there, once it's set up, is I'll blow it out with compressed air, and then I'll take a toothbrush and buff the bark as best I can. It's pretty heavy bark, so I don't know how that'll work, but first time for everything, I guess. So I've got some feed and wax in this little can, and I've got this brush, and I just want to brush some in the bark. So that's what I'll be doing for a little while. I'll let it set up about a half an hour. I'll buff it up, and I'll bring you back when it's time to work on the inside. See you in a bit. Just look at that bark. Isn't that beautiful? I just hate to cut it away. I do plan to leave plenty of it, which will mean a smallish bowl, but I can't go real big with the bowl anyway. I can go big this way, but I can't go so big side to side. But that is so unique. Maybe you got this growing in your backyard. I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. And it's just the coolest thing. I have the piece turned around with the tenon mounted up in the chuck. I have a freshly sharpened 5/8 inch bowl gouge. I'm going to get my mask and face shield on. We're going to be turning at 1300 RPM. Looking good. Getting further than I thought we might, sideways. But you can see we're starting to run off the edge over here. This side's still good, but I better not go much wider than that. And that's okay. Just trying to clean up my cut. It's a kind of an odd wood to turn because the chisel enters really easily into the cork, and then it gets more difficult when you get down into the wood. Not very difficult, but difficult. Yeah, that's as far as I better go. Actually, I'm going to grab my scraper, my negative rake scraper, and scrape up this way before I remove any more wood. Probably needs a new edge on it. Yeah, it does. I'll be right back. Okay, that's got it. About a half an inch. That might be just about right, considering how thick the walls are. I'm going to do a little more scraping over here. Well, you know, I'm going to have to go back to my gouge. I came up here too far doing something. I don't know what. I bet we're there. We most certainly are. About 3/8 of an inch on the bottom. I'm going to call that good. And it's pretty smooth. So we know what that means. Time for sanding. As before, I'm going to start the sanding with my Sandoflex. I'm going to sand the bark. Most of it's done, but not all of it. And that's 180 grit, and that's as fine as I'll go. Then I'll switch to my 2-inch sanding disc with an Abranet 80 grit disc to start, and I'll work up through 400. I'll show you both of those as soon as I get my mask on. So that's what that looks like. I'll do more of it, of course. And then with the lathe spinning forward at about 400 RPM. And that doesn't look like that'll be too hard, but it is going to take some time. I'll bring you back here in a little bit when it's time to put some finish on. See you in a bit. Okay, we're back to the Howard Feed and Wax. And I've put some in this can, and I'm just going to go ahead and brush the whole thing, see how that works, instead of using a rag. I wish I had another piece of this. I'd like to try sanding sealer and shellac on it. Well, you know what? I forgot. I cut a piece off the bottom, didn't I? I'll do a little experiment with that. Sanding on this thing was kind of a pain. The edge of the sanding disc kept getting caught by these odd bits of bark. So it took a real light touch and I had to go slow. But I got it done, didn't I? And that's a plus. That was the whole idea, as I recall. So I will brush this on like I am, and then I'll wipe it with a rag. And then I'll wait a half an hour and I'll buff it up. And I'll bring you back when it's time to take the tenon off. We're just about done, boys and girls. So I'll see you back here in a little bit. I have a block of wood mounted up in my chuck. I'm going to place the bowl over that and bring up my tailstock. I still have the center hole there for reference, so I'll just drive my live center into that. And that will help center it. And I'll bring up the tool rest. I'm going to spin the piece up, hold my thumbnail against the edge of the tenon. Make sure it's hitting equally all the way around. I'm going to use a 3/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge and begin to removing the tenon. Now we'll check for clearance, even though I'm sure we have tons of it, and we do indeed. Check my work, looks pretty good. Just keep working it away. Well, the lathe is spinning at 500 RPM. Now that's pretty small, so I'm going to get just a little bit closer with my tool rest and a little bit higher. Then I'm going to use a 3/8 inch swept-back bowl gouge so that I can get in there closer. And just keep working it away. And that's quite small, so I'm going to turn the speed down to about 200 RPM. And I'm going to apply the bevel of the gouge against the bottom of the bowl. Pressure towards the headstock. Right hand on the gouge, left hand on the switch. And when the little nub stops turning, we'll know we're through. or disintegrates like that. Then I'll just take this over here to the workbench, sand it up, sign it, get it finished, and I'll be right back. Well, here it is, one Cork Oak bowl in the books. Isn't that beautiful? My gosh, it's so unusual. What do you think of that design? Rounded ends, is that good or bad? I think it's kind of different. There's the bottom all finished up. It's just fun to look at. It's fun to feel. I wish you could feel it. If you're sitting there with your wine glass in your hand, reach over and grab that cork out of the bottle and feel that. Just squish it a little bit. This feels exactly like that. Just squish it. It's really quite pretty, quite unique. I'd like to thank Dennis for sending this all the way up from California for all to enjoy. If you like this video, thumbs up please. I'd sure appreciate it. If you're a subscriber, thank you very kindly. I truly appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. An easy way to subscribe is just click my picture you see there near the end of the video. Your comments are always welcome, and I read all of them. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop, signing off.